Hello, everyone. My name is Travis Johnson, and I am here with a peer-to-peer collaboration with Tammy Lea Meyer. And we're exploring each other's work, just learning about what each other does and getting to know each other better. And we had tried it before, and we had so much fun. We wanted to go deeper and further and explore new territories. So thank you for your time, Tammy.
Thank you so much. I very much appreciate the opportunity to be able to share together and to find out we have so much in common with what I've seen in your video creations. I feel like we're looking in the same direction, and so I'm excited to go deeper, as you say. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things I wanted that was very interesting was the term or the phrase media experimentalist, and I just wanted to start there maybe, and then maybe we could backtrack and get how you got into your work and what you do. But what does that mean in this day and age when things are so fluid and, with people putting out content? We're in a world where we're all media companies. What does it mean to be a media experimentalist, and what draws you to that work?
Wonderful. Well, I guess for me, a media experimentalist is, and how I kind of do that is, I'm knocking around trying to figure out how to create media with my peers that in a different kind of way. So part of the way that I see how media works is that we do a lot of thinking about what it is that we're going to put out there in the world, and we land on a message with specific languaging, and it's very crafted. What I'm more interested in is in having real conversations with other people and having the courage to be present in that moment, ask the questions that occur to us naturally as communicators. And rather than creating media that is a message, a one-way message, to create media that is exploring our thinking together and exploring the space between us.
Beautiful. That's very well articulated, and I see that a lot. There's this honoring of both sides. It's a conversation. It's not a one-sided conversation, and that's refreshing. That's very refreshing. How did with your work with the podcast like this, what drew you to do podcasts like this? Like, where did you start? What was the first tool that you picked up and used, and then what kind of drives you to where you are now?
Okay, so back in the day in 2001, I had a series of insights around media, democracy, and the economy. And at that time, I got together with a couple of folks that are local to me here in Vancouver. Rick Logtenberg, who was the key core person, and he and I, as well as a person named Omer Ginor, co-founded an organization called the People's Network. So this was before YouTube and Facebook, and we created a platform kind of like a precursor to a social media network, helping people to be able to create media about their projects, and so that they could communicate what it is that they wanted to other members of the community, and advocate for the work that they were doing. And so that's where I started. So definitely with, now we have cell phones that do video. At that time, that wasn't something that was a thing. And of course, that was before YouTube and Facebook as well. So that's kind of where I started. And then over the years, what I've been working on is, so how do we actually have the same kind of conversations we have in pubs and coffee shops and our living rooms, and how do we have those conversations more broadly? So what I've been doing is is really looking for opportunities to be able to talk to people about the work that they're doing, where they have a sense of agency themselves around what it is that they're creating, so that we can create that together. So I find that there's, in traditional media making, obviously there's a fair amount of investment and actual money that it takes to make media. I'm seeing these new tools that we have don't require that upfront investment in the same sort of way. It just requires that we have people who are willing to have a conversation and willing to follow a thread together. And so at this time, I'm experimenting with people like yourself, and in particular with people in the new economy movement, to be able to talk about what are the challenges we're facing, what are the tools we can be using, and can we align ourselves in the same direction together so that we can at least have some useful conversations about what we can be doing together, for the record.
Beautiful. You said something there. I want to kind of unpack maybe a little bit the economy and where we're going and what challenges are we facing? What real challenges are we facing that you see from your perspective that you're addressing, talking about, doing action to change? What are some of those?
So for me, over the last few years, I've really been looking at the economy and how it works. One of the roles that I play is I'm on the board of directors of a small credit union here in what's known as Vancouver, called CCEC Credit Union, and those initials stand for Community Congress for Economic Change. And so we're a tiny little institution. We're a credit union, so we're a cooperative financial institution. And so there's an opportunity for me to think into what our members might want. As an elected director, I'm looking at governance from the perspective of the member. And so this has given me an opportunity to look more broadly at the economy and really assess what's going on there. Because, in the ways that power works in our world, oftentimes when we're talking about politics, we're actually talking about who's for what. And following the money is oftentimes what we're alluding to when we say politics is getting in the way of good governance.
Yes, I think we froze a little bit there, and I'll put this question out.
It could be arcane or complex, but and it doesn't work the way that we think it works. In a nutshell, I would say that the way that we create value in the world, so the way that we create currency, is through creating debt, and that debt keeps us in a cycle of needing growth to meet those interest rates. On with currency as a resource, and what happens there is that we don't have the movement, the flow of currency that we need to be able to have money available for those of us at the bottom of the pyramid. And so I guess the bottom line is that humans have created the economy, but we haven't thoughtfully created it. And so you have people all over the world right now who are creating solutions for the ways that we trade things, the ways that we give value to things, and the ways that we move money around. And that's an important thing for us to look at together and build together.
Beautiful. I'm glad you shared all that. I'm reading right now the book Debt.
Good.
And the opening phrase got me. The opening quote where it said, if you owe the bank $100,000, the bank owns you. If you owe the bank $100 million, you own the bank. And I have the book and the audio. And I had to like rewind it and make sure I heard that correctly. I was like, wow. And then, he explores the first 5,000 years of uh, debt, money. It really is. Oh man, opened up a can of worms for me, just on our economy. It's made me look at debt differently, and the power struggle, and the purpose, and uh, the scariness, if you will, on debt, and who has the power and who controls what, and how that I see so much that people are looked at as inventory. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, in a way, that's not a bad way to look at it. From my perspective, is that people are inventory. Yes, we are all of value. And I think those are some of the critical shifts that we need to make. Is that we're not if we consider ourselves as inventory, and that our skills and resources are a part of an asset map, for example, then, how can we make sure that our offerings are of value and are valued? So, right now we have an overarching sense of a very extractive modality of understanding our world. What can we take? What if, rather than what we're taking, we're focusing on what we're giving and what is actually of value? So part of what's happened is that the corporatization of our social sphere has made people either apathetic or afraid that, what it is that they're offering is going to be taken from them and used by corporations. What if we were in control of what it is that we put out in the world in a different way? What if we had agency and were able to create value in our communities in an overt way? So I advocate for us to be able to actually look at the full value accounting of what it is that we create as humans, of our volunteerism, our passion projects, our ideas, and our criticisms of the current state of systems today, so that we can be looking in the same direction as humans to design and create an economic system that works for all humans, that is just. And I guess where I'm coming from is that I think that every person on the planet should have access to the economy as a baseline right, and that we should have agency within our economy and move towards us having the same agency and powers as corporate personhood gives to people. If corporations can have some of the same agency as humans, then humans should have the same agency as corporations.
I love that. I love that. That's excellent. How do we get there?
That's the $1 trillion question, I suppose. One of the things that I have thought would be a great idea is to pose a design problem. How would you get 10 units of currency to every person on the planet? What would be required to make that happen? The reason why I like a design problem is because it allows people to come together under a common purpose. And I think that it makes sense for anyone to consider how it would empower us broadly to have agency in our economic world. And so one of the pieces that I think that this design problem can tease us to consider is, how can we all own that financial mechanism? How can we create a global wallet that is owned by the people themselves? And if you imagine the revenue that's generated by banks all around the world for moving our money around, what if we owned that financial instrument or system that was the backbone for trade and exchange? And I think that one of the ways that we can push back against the corporatism and the challenges that banks are presenting for us is for us to be the bank, to own the bank. And so credit unions obviously have that aspiration. And they provide that in a smaller market way. But I think that a mechanism that would connect everyone and give everyone the agency to interact economically would be a very powerful shift, and provide an opportunity to have important conversations around how that's governed, how it's formed, and what ownership would actually mean at that level.
That is beautiful. Did you? I don't know if you saw that or heard the story about the gentleman that has a yogurt company, and he gave all of his employees 10%.
Yes.
That warmed my heart. That was not on my radar, but when I saw that, I said, "Oh my goodness!" To me, that's headed in that direction. Because giving some of those folks, looking at their how much they make, how much they'll ever make if they stay in their current position. Some of that is like labor, so you can only do that for so long, and your body gives out. And giving, what were your thoughts when you saw that?
I thought it was wonderful. The owner, I probably saw the same little video that other people saw. And it was really heartwarming. And one of the things that I remember from it is that the owner wasn't originally wasn't born in America. I believe he was born in Eastern Europe. I believe. Do you remember where from?
Turkey, I believe he was. Turkey,
And so it really felt to me that he was bringing some of he was living his values truly, and I think that there are people from all over the world that come to North America and create businesses, and it was just a really beautiful thing to see him giving back in such a real way. And in particular, the woman who was near the end of the video, who was there from the beginning, like just her tears really spoke volumes, that she had been there from the beginning. She'd seen how it all went, and just how touched she was that she was given that ownership and agency within the business was beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. I was so moved by that. And I've taken a similar approach with the music side of things. Just the music business was so brutal and so specific with who had what, and it still is the remnant of what's left. And with media, I kind of see the same thing with what we're doing here. It's when you used a phrase last time. Intellectual capital.
Yes.
And can you explore that a little bit, intellectual capital and like the value of this exchange that we're doing here today? And what does this conversation mean 30 years from now?
Ooh. Okay, so we'll start with intellectual capital, and that's as opposed to intellectual property. And that distinction for me is recognizing the value of it, while calling into question the conversation needed around property in particular, especially as it relates to ideas. So intellectual value or intellectual capital is what I have preferred to talk about when speaking about our ideas. And I see that this kind of modality where we are sharing ideas, we're influencing each other's thinking as being incredibly valuable in looking at how we create shared intellectual capital. And it's not just intellectual capital we're sharing and building, but it's also social capital. So you and I have invested our time today to have this conversation, which we're learning from. So there's I like to call them metrics of value. So one of the metrics of value of this conversation is that we get to know each other. We get to be inspired by each other. We get to spin out our ideas in front of each other and see where what the cat licks up, as it were. And and then there's the ideas themselves. So that's talking about, you know, the value in this moment is being able to put out these ideas, think into them together, and potentially there are some next steps that we'll come up with. There's then what if in the process of us having this conversation, and we put it out there in the world, and then other people are like, wow, oh gosh, there was that idea that Tamers had, that I heard when I was in that conversation with, she was in that conversation with Travis, and you know, what Travis said tweaked me to think about this little thing, right? And those two ideas together, wow, now we could really get some leverage on that. And so these are ways that we can start moving forward agendas and bring new people on board to be able to help out. Because of course, you can't do it all. I can't do it all. These ideas, this intellectual value or intellectual capital is of value, but we're still looking for ways to make that value real. So part of what we talked about last week was paying attention and the economy of attention. And so in creating media about these things, we're creating the capacity or the framework for this economy of attention to begin to have some uptake on our ideas or intellectual capital, to begin to reap the rewards of what that value is. And starting from understanding, moving on to bringing resources together, and more importantly, to my mind, telling a broader story of how this is meaningful to other people.
That is wonderful. Do you find that some of this is, you cannot measure the value of it? It's emotional. It's that thing that's not quite tangible.
It's definitely intangible, and it leans into the tangible because we're creating an artifact of our time together, right? So there's the intangibles of me being able to express and explore some of these ideas that I've been working on for so long. There's this sense of connection, and not being isolated in this massive dream to shift our economy and our social spheres into a just and beautiful world. There's the intangibles of who might see this later in the nick of time to be able to participate with something else. We may not even know all of the impacts that this butterfly wing of a conversation is having or can have in the future. So you spoke of it 30 years from now. 30 years from now, I'm hoping that we have just and fair economic systems that people are participating in, and that we understand that the value that we create together is of value to all of us, and that we are making it up as we go along in the here and now, and that we may not know where it's going, and it may seem intangible, but there are real tangible benefits to both, for me, just even being able to articulate this with someone who's willing to pick up the ball and carrying on the conversation, that's of incredible value. And it's pretty tangible on the inside because I feel good.
Yes, and that's what I walked away from our conversation last week, and I felt so cleansed. I felt so good. I felt, yeah, let's do this more. Let's do this again. Let's other people involved. This is powerful stuff. It's very pioneer in one respect, even though this type of thing has been around for however many years. YouTube, Facebook, to where we are here. And it felt very untangible, but also very real. And I believe it is the groundwork for the change. Will we reach a peak? What do you see? We're doing this type of thing because I think this is the start, the catalyst, the birthing place for a just economy. Because it's people coming together, right, and talking. And then what's the next step?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about creating models so that people can see it. So it's valuable to have these kinds of conversations so that we can model what that conversation piece might look like, right? And I'm not saying that other people aren't doing that, but for me, I have to feel it from the inside and experience it. And then I can, every time I do a podcast, I get better, right? And I'm recognizing that, I really need to consider who's the audience, who are we talking to? And I'm looking to navigate that more towards what's really meaningful between the communicator, the people that are communicating, and starting there. Like what's important for us to understand so that we're deeply present in this conversation. And then continue to learn from how we can create media that's actually useful for other people as well. Both in diving into ideas together, but also in bringing on board other people with skills, abilities, passions, resources, assets, needs, so that we can understand better how this kind of direct communication can serve us all.
I love that. And speaking of being present, is there anything that's come to the surface today, last week, this week, that you want to share or talk about or explore?
So I'm going to go here. One thing, I'm going to talk about my personal challenges with the media experimentation. It's incredibly painful and powerful both to watch myself afterwards. Like my sense of identity, it doesn't necessarily match from the inside to the outside. I've never been one to even really look in the mirror very much in my life, and I've had a quite an unmediated life. And what I mean by that is I haven't been a person that really has watched much television or any of those sorts of things. And so the experience of watching myself has been a really big challenge and has been probably the biggest stopper that I have in doing this work, because I need to learn from myself. I need to see how it is that I'm presenting so that I can modify it to, not sound like a jerk or really sit in my authenticity and be real. And the corollary to that work is witnessing the self and seeing, watching the media afterward to improve myself and my work. And it's been really hard. And I find that the biggest barrier for me in finding participants who want to do this is finding people that are willing to go through that uncomfortability of actually creating media that is something that is then out in the world and can be seen by others. And that sort of that internal shame mechanism that we have, or ego piece around how it is that we show up in the world. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen in that space. And I guess part of why I wanted to bring it up is because it's real. it's really, really hard to just show up and be myself. I'm not playing a role. I'm actually just Tammy, who is a regular person that is sometimes confused, doesn't always articulate in the way that I want to, but is willing to kind of play in this space of pushing forward these this ideological ideas and living in it, not necessarily knowing where we're going, but knowing that I'm learning from it, growing.
Thank you. All I can say is thank you for sharing that. That actually got me a little bit teary-eyed. Like that's powerful. That's very powerful. Thank you so much for that level of just authenticity, vulnerability. I deal with the exact same thing every time I put a video up. And that's what stopped me for so long. But I think I don't really know the value of this 30 years from now. I just watched a video of me performing 18 years ago today.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And I'm gonna put it up, but it's funny. What I found myself doing is listening to some of the notes I was singing, and my body was moving and going, okay, hit that note, do this, I'm going, there's nothing I can do. But that's a very powerful thing. Because I started to see things when you said, not acting as a role, just being yourself. And then this shame that comes up of, oh, that wasn't quite right. Oh, I struggled there, or I stumbled with my words. But that's okay. Yes. We're human beings, And it's like, we're not robots, but that is a real thing. That's a very, that's worth doing it right there. Just that. Yes. Before we get into all these other deep ideas and all, these things that are gonna get juicy and we want to conquer the world. It's just that right there is so precious. Yeah. That is beautiful. Oh, wow. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. The power of authenticity, and wow, I can meditate. I'm gonna just meditate on that and explore that, and then I think there's something there. Do you have anything this year, that you want to get accomplished? I know we all have so many goals, but is there something that people can join in, that I can join in thinking about with moving into a more just, I'm gonna say just world, just economy?
Yes. So one thing that I've really been wanting to go to conferences and really connect with people. But the challenge that I have in conferences is that we all come together. There's this explosion and smush of ideas, and we all get very intoxicated, and then we all go back off back to our worlds and silos. So over the last couple of years, what I've been looking to do is to create podcasts ahead of an event, during an event, and then after, so that we're following this storyline of people that are doing important work in the world. So this August, there is the World Social Forum coming up in Montreal. So it's here in Canada. And so I was asked by a collaborator, Matthew Slater, who does work with complementary currencies, community currencies. He helps to build the websites and the software that runs them for several hundred complementary currency sites all over the world. And so I met him at the Impact Economy Summit put on by Caroline Smalley of the Citizens Media and the I3 Co-op last fall. Anyhow, so Matt asked me to participate in profiling his work up for the World Social Forum. And so I'm going, he's going, and a bunch of people are going to be coming together in August in Montreal. So I'd like to do some podcasts ahead of that, profiling some of the people that are going, in the hopes of being able to have a sense of community and connection prior to the event, so that the work that we do when we're in place, when we're in presence together, can build on what we've already talked about. So what I've pitched to him is that we do some podcasts ahead of the event with other participants, and also profiling and looking at his work, so that we can start to do the work now from wherever we are, and begin to know each other, so that we can have a more resilient and generative connection when the time comes. So that's one piece that I'm looking at and building towards.
Yeah, please keep me abreast of all that and in the loop. I would love to just, I don't know where I'll be come August. I have a lot of things that are in flux right now, and I'm working on hopefully doing some traveling. You'll see some stuff I'll be putting out on. I'll be doing some traveling, and hopefully I can set myself up to do traveling more. I'm really launching it now. So thank you for sharing that. I'm definitely interested in that. Something that you said about the intoxication of a conference, and that my heart really leans towards activists, people, agents of change, thought leaders. But I do see that where you get so hyped up, and it's because it's all the energy, it's all the thoughts, and then you leave that and things taper off because you're by yourself and you're just with yourself to do your work alone most of the time. And what are some things that maybe can help energize after the concert, not conference, in between, that keep that work going?
Yeah, I guess, that's where I see the podcast as being useful. So one of the pieces that I love about you is that you just jump right in. You have a beautiful natural inquisitiveness. You are just naturally looking at the ideas and asking these beautiful natural questions to fill in your understanding. And I see that, and space holding, right? Because we all have a lot to say, but who's listening? Right? So your job and my job, frankly, is to listen, right? And then ask good questions to turn it around. And so in the lead up to this, like just very specifically with you, I would love for you to consider, if you were open, to do some discovery podcasts with other participants that might be going to the World Social Forum. Not necessarily that you have to involve yourself in that as that, but perhaps that's a way that we can both kind of learn this together, give feedback to each other on what's working, and do a wider service to leveraging and advocating for people's work that they're doing, that will all come together for that event.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I stay pretty open. I'm very open to the world, and I've committed to being a lifelong learner, and just, I think it's funny. I think now that I'm out of a formal education, a formal institution of education, I've learned so much more. My head sometimes feels like it's about to explode, and I have to just like break it down into bite-sized pieces. So yeah, no, that's really cool. Yeah, I definitely want to see where this takes us and explore what we can do, and really dig down deep and see what pieces we can tackle, and see what things that we align with that resonate. That we can get really passionate about. I love that. I want to shift gears just a little bit. We've been going pretty good, and I don't want to exhaust our time or anything like that. And you don't have to even answer this, but what growing up or the early years led you to this place? What aided and influenced you to be so conscious? If that, I don't know if that sounds trite or, you know.
Mm-hmm. So, well, my parents split up when I was 5, and a couple years later, my mom remarried, and they had met at a AA dance, which of course had a Christian influence. So they became born again Christians together. And so I had this opportunity at a young age um, to have that lens of Christianity, and we moved all over the country. So when we would move into a new community, our first welcoming would be through the church, and so there was an opportunity for me to really feel into how we were connected socially in that way. At the same time, we didn't have any television, so I grew up not having a lot of media around me. And so I understood my world through relationships and through, real connection with people, not mediated connection with people, as well as without having that media influence as far as the programming that was produced for mass consumption. And so through that, I really understood the world differently, I think. And and it kind of set up my neural net to respond differently to mediated information and media in particular. Advertising in particular, I actually feel nauseous when I experience advertising. And I think many people do, but I definitely have a visceral feeling of throwing up in my mouth a little bit. And so it led me to think of to really consider what this important function that media provides for us in a different way. And so when the internet happened, and when now we're in this social media sphere space, when that all happened, I was looking at it from a different point of view, from and which many people are anyway. I'm not saying I'm much different from anyone, but I really those early days in my life really showed me the value of relationships, of being in connection with people and being peers and on the level with people, not having this great power over. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's some very powerful stuff there. I would argue that growing up with no television would make you extremely different because the programming is so powerful.
Yes.
So it is. It's gonna, and that's okay. I love it. I grew up with no television as well. A very similar. So pretty much all of the 80s, I have no clue what people are talking about when they mention, oh, you remember that show? Nope, never saw it. So, yeah. And so I find myself on an island. So I relate to a lot of what you're saying, and it is very different. But I think when it gives you a different perspective on media, and I think how to navigate through the world and the programming. When you really start looking at that, because it's very specific.
Yes.
To push you into a certain place in a certain way, and to create emotions and habits, and so that is absolutely lovely. Looking at the time, I think I'm fine. I don't know where you're at. I'm loving it. This is beautiful. But I want to is there anything that, in thinking with the mindset and the context that 30 years from now, this will change it'll have such a different emotional effect, this conversation here. And I think we're at a threshold where no human beings have ever been self-documented.
Yes.
Like they are today. Is there anything you want to share with that, with knowing that in that kind of context?
Okay, so I love that you're framing this as 30 years in the future, because it's going to happen. I will be, what is it? I will be 76.
Yes, ma'am.
And I guess what I'm really looking to and train in myself and to be held accountable for is, how do I really truly show up with what I think and what I believe right now in the presence of others? And what I think and what I believe is that we can create radical, beautiful change on this planet right now. And that we are, whether it's chosen and really focused and intended or not. But all of the decisions that we're making, it is having an impact. And I would like to see us create media that is specifically talking about where we are in the world today, how we can turn things around, and take action together on those things. And as for me, as long as we're able to begin to practice that and to begin to build trust together about what it is that our hearts and minds and souls are calling for us to do, then we're at least on the path. And so in 30 years, I would like to see us really standing in our power with how we choose to govern ourselves, with how we choose to feed ourselves, with how we choose to deal with some of the healing that we need to do as a human race across all cultures. And I would like for us to have a economic system that is owned by all of us, understood by all of us, and is creating the foundation for true justice for everyone. So those are the things that I think in 30 years I will want to see that I have participated with, and that we are not just moving the needle on, but actually doing.
That is wonderful. That's excellent for me. That's beautiful. I had, this has felt excellent, wonderful, good. I say we call it for now and explore, we'll keep exploring further podcasts like this.
Wonderful. So this coming Wednesday, you, I, and Caroline Smalley will be joining each other in a peer-to-peer podcast. And so I look forward to that. But I'd love for us to be thinking of how we can really serve each other. So I feel like, the first podcast, we really looked at you and what you're doing. This podcast, we look more at what I'm doing. And between us, I would love for us to consider what we can be doing to help serve each other, because it's not just about you helping me or me helping you, but what we can do together that I think is really powerful.
Yes, I love that. That is extremely valuable. So thank you for bringing that up. Thank you so much for your time. Again, we'll stop it and just hang on the line for a bit afterwards, if you don't mind.
Wonderful.
But this has been fun for me.
Okay. Thank you so much, Travis Johnson. You're awesome.
You are too. All righty.